If you love classic contemporary Christian music and the people that made it, please like this video and subscribe to our channel to help support us and keep us going. This is Stage Right, and I am your host, John Thorne. They say if you die with a handful of friends, you die a rich man. Well, I have several buses full, and I'm very excited to share them all with you. Welcome to Stage Right. I am your host, John Thorne. This is episode 27, and as this episode goes live today, it's actually right at noon on Good Friday. So I just want to encourage you sometime in the next few days, spend some time alone with the Lord and just thank Him for His sacrifice and for what His dying on the cross and being resurrected from the dead. It provides us not only salvation, but life, abundant life, and ultimately eternal life. And it allows us access to His Father. We have a relationship with God because of the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross. So spend some time in the next few days alone with the Lord, just thanking Him, however you see fit, however you want to remember it. But just be mindful of that this weekend. And as Christians, it's one of the best things we can celebrate is what our Savior did for us. So I was on vacation the last few weeks, and I just did some episodes ahead of time so it wouldn't miss any weeks and no one would know I was gone. But I got a really cool email while I was on vacation from a guy named Chris Johnston that listens to the podcast, and he and his wife, Jeannie, actually loved a band called Jag. Back in the day, they opened for Whiteheart on a tour, and Billy Smiley produced them. And he said, "Hey, I love the band Jag. I was wondering, have you ever heard of them, or do you know anything that happened to them or whatever?" Well, the funniest thing ever is the drummer for Jag, Chuck Connors, was already scheduled to be my guest today on the show. So I thought that was pretty funny that he was asking about this obscure Christian band from the early 90s. And Chuck, I had already recorded the call with Chuck to be my guest today.
Hey Rockstar provides digital marketing software and services to generate more leads, more exposure, and more revenue for your business or organization. Let Hey Rockstar amplify your awesomeness.
So here is part one of my conversation with Chuck Connors from Jag, Out of the Gray, and Geoff Moore in the Distance. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, if you're driving down the road, pull off to the side, get out of your car, and stand and cheer for my great friend, Mr. Chuck Connors. How you doing today, Chuck?
I'm good. What's going on, Thorne? It's been a minute since we actually had a conversation, man.
Yeah, we've texted and stuff over the last few years, but it's been a while since we talked for sure. Okay, Chuck, so today, this is your life. This is all about you today. So we're gonna go deep into the life and times of Chuck Connors. So let's start by telling everyone where you were born and raised, Chuck.
Oh, man. Yeah, so I was actually born in West Palm Beach, Florida, man. So
You're kidding.
no, I was, dude. No, a lot of people, I grew up here in Alabama, so I guess, with this southern accent I got and my redneck hobbies, everybody assumed that I was born here. So, but no, I was born in South Florida, man. My dad was a pastor down there.
That's awesome.
We lived there for I think till I was 7 or 8, and then we moved up to Alabama.
Wow, that's wild, dude. Okay, so how old were you then when music first hit your radar?
Oh, man, good question. Man, early. So 4 or 5 years old. My mom was a huge Elvis Presley fan, man.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, dude, I'm another person affected by the king, right? So
right.
My mom got me a couple of greatest hits albums and stuff, and dude, I just little kid loved it. That was the first thing, and then I would say second. This is crazy because I wasn't a big Beatle fan growing up like most of my musician friends are.
Right.
I kind of missed that somehow, but
you might have been too young.
Maybe, but here's what's crazy. So I'm like 6 years old. I want to say something like that. And the advertisement for the Live and Let Die movie came on the TV. And I hear the song, and I'm like, that is stinking cool. And I got my parents to take me to some, gosh, back then, you could go to these stores and buy 45s, right? I got the 45 of Live and Let Die by Paul McCartney and Wings.
Oh my God.
And so that was something that kind of launched me into being interested. And then lucky for me, dude, I had the music director at our church was a guy named Hart Morris, and he played drums every now and then on Sunday nights when they were doing youth stuff. And then they also had a youth band and had a guy that played drums. And dude, the first time they played and I saw that guy playing a kid, I was like, oh my gosh, man, this is what's going on in my head, my heart, And so my dad being the preacher, every now and then when we were up at the church, I'd slip into the choir room, they called it back then, remember?
Yeah.
And get his sticks out and bang around and stuff. So that's kind of how it started. And then, obviously for a lot of us kids, man, it leads to, getting out your mom's pots and pans and wooden spoons and
right.
Making racket till they break down and get you a real drum set. So
that's awesome.
That's kind of how it started.
How old were you when you got your first drum kit then?
Well, I was probably 5 or 6 when I first started getting drum sets for Christmas, but they were the old, paperhead drum sets that lasted about 3 months,
Sears catalog.
Yeah, or your sister would take the pickup sticks and stab holes in them and stuff and ruin them. And there were no replacement heads for those things, man. So
no, there weren't.
I had a couple of those little kits, as a kid. And then I did get a real snare drum at some point in elementary school, but I didn't get my first real drum kit, dude, till I was in 7th grade.
Wow. 7th grade.
I was in 7th grade. I remember, dude, it was a Zykos acrylic kit. And I found out years later that that's the company that sold their patent, if I got the story correctly, to Ludwig,
For the acrylic.
Yeah. So I had a see-through Bonham-looking kit, but it actually was Zykos was the brand. But like junior high, man, like 7th grade.
All right, so you get your drum set. Who did you start practicing to? Who was your musical influences when you would sit and play with albums?
Oh man, that's a good question too. So, man, I lived in a rural community and wasn't in school band or anything. So just like you're saying, man, I started making noise on the things. And one of my best friends got him a guitar about the same time I got a drum set. So we had like a 2-piece band, and he would come over and we would play along to records.
Oh, cool.
You turn up the stereo as loud as you could get it and then try not to play over it too bad. But dude, everything, man, I was all over the map, dude. So like, I might be trying to play along to a Styx record or a ZZ Top record or a Van Halen record.
Yep.
And then I might find myself trying to play along to some pop stuff too. So it was kind of all over the map.
Oh, wow. Cool, though. That's actually going to serve you better later. All right. So what was your first concert?
Oh my gosh, you're not going to believe this. Man, when I was still living in Florida, I had an uncle that was a law enforcement guy, and his job, he got security detail at the Elvis concert there in West Palm, and was able to get some tickets to the first live concert I ever went to was Elvis Presley.
Oh my gosh, dude. No way.
Dude, I'm serious. I still have a couple of Polaroids from that concert, man.
Unbelievable.
So this was like 72, man. So this was big Elvis days.
Oh my gosh, dude. It doesn't matter if it was deathbed Elvis days. I'm serious, dude. You saw Elvis in concert. That is remarkable.
Yeah. And I think, years later, I got a little interested. I want to say, I'm not 100% sure this is right. I think Ron Tutt might have been the drummer. I can't remember. But dude, gosh, it was Elvis in person. I'd listen to those records, from the time I was, 4 or 5 years old. So
right.
Yeah, pretty cool. I didn't know how big a deal it was at the time, obviously.
Dude, I have to say, out of all the hundreds of conversations and thousands of conversations I've had with musicians, anytime first concerts got brought up, you're the only person that gave Elvis as that answer.
It's crazy, dude, because literally it wasn't long before he died, man.
Right. I got to tell you, dude, I'm trying to wrap my mind around that. That's just such a stunningly cool answer. Dude, that answer is kind of like the first time I put Pop Rocks in my mouth.
As mesmerized as I was, dude, I had no idea how big a deal it was at the time.
Right. Okay. So Elvis was your first concert. What was your first Christian concert?
Well, so the first, as a kid, dude, I don't remember the names of the groups because, that was big Southern gospel days, man, in the 70s. And,
Sure.
but I'll tell you the group I remember, and you'll be able to relate to this. The group that I remember the most, and this would fast forward into my latter years of high school or just out of high school, somewhere in that area. It was Truth, man. They came to our church all the time.
That is awesome.
And I somehow missed you, man, because I know you played in Truth.
I did. What years did Truth come to your church?
Would have been 84, 85, 86 in there.
Yeah, you just missed me because I joined in 87.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, man.
Yeah, dude, kind of a big influence for me. Not that was the kind of music I was interested in, but, at that time, I didn't care. It was they were really playing, it was live music and a bunch of sweet dudes that I got to meet. And yeah, so that was the first Christian music that I remember being introduced to that caught my attention. And then I'll tell you a story in a minute. Kind of out of that, I was turned on to some other stuff. So I think the first Christian concert I went to that just totally blew me away was to see Whiteheart.
Oh my gosh. No way.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's wild.
So in that era, was kind of introduced to them. And then, of course, living in the South, Mylon Lefevre and Broken Heart were huge.
Oh, yeah.
Down here in my neck of the woods. Dave and the Giants, you remember them?
Yeah.
They were Mississippi guys. So those were guys that, I could actually get to go see kind of on a regular basis. And you remember, I don't know if you remember the culture back then, all the CCM bands typically, when they're traveling, you have a group of volunteers that help set up and everything.
Yep.
And we found out, me and my buddies had this little Christian band. We found out real quick, if you got on the volunteer crew, man, you get a T-shirt. So, yeah, dude. So we'd go work our butts off all day and get our Mylon T-shirt or whoever it was.
Dude, that is so awesome that you guys did that. That is fantastic.
Man, dude, good stuff, man. Meet some sweet people. And
right. Well, you get to be around the inner workings of a concert.
Yeah, dude, you're getting to see how the whole thing works from behind the scenes. And, oh, gosh, dude, that's priceless stuff right there, dude, all that.
That is so cool. So what were some of the other shows you did where you got a T-shirt?
Oh, gosh, man, fast forward, I think early days, Striper, man, helped load in the Striper show, Mylon, Dave and the Giants.
That was like a sneak peek into your future.
I will tell you this. So this kind of has a connection to you. So, and it's also how one of the reasons I became really interested in Christian music, man. I wasn't at a good place in my life, to be completely honest, but still going to my church and everything. And my mom, bless her heart, dude, she always tried to turn me on to Christian music, and none of it was anything I was interested in and wanted to pay attention to. But Truth came to our church on, I don't remember what year this was, dude, maybe 84. I just kind of want to be around the music thing, man. I didn't have any aspirations at that time to be involved in Christian music, but just want, had been in a little garage band, and with some buddies and stuff, and was interested in being around that. So I signed up to be a runner. And you know him, the guy running sound for Truth at the time was Paul Glasgow.
What?
Yeah. And I think you guys are buds, right?
Paul called me like 3 weeks ago at midnight. He called me, my phone rings, and I look down, because you know me, midnight, I'm usually up.
You probably just woke up.
I know, right? I'm seriously, dude, I'm sitting there doing something at my desk, and my phone rings. I look down at it, and it's Paul Glasgow. I was like, oh my gosh. So we talked for like 45 minutes to an hour.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So listen, dude, I didn't know who he was. They said, hey man, this is your responsibility today will be to drive the sound man around. I was like, oh, cool. So I want to say he was wanting to paint their speakers or something. And, we'd run to town to get paint and all this. So we're riding around, and he was asking me what music I liked and stuff. And I was like, yeah, you asked me, did I like Christian music? I'm like, well, not a lot of it, and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, hey, man, I just got this new Whiteheart cassette, man. We'll llisten to it a little bit while we're riding around. I'm like, hey, man, that's really awesome, And when we got done running our errands, he goes, hey, man, why don't you keep that, man? You can have it.
Wow.
I'm like, no way. Thanks a lot.
That's Paul.
Long story short, man, I ended up listening to it a lot. And it was a piece of, I think, the Lord getting my attention at a time when I was living like a lot of preachers' kids, I guess, just wasn't paying very much attention to my faith, and had a lot of things going on in my life that weren't healthy. And so that was a big deal for me, man. And there were some things, it must have been some songs or some lyric that spoke to me. And, at the end of that year, man, was I think the term we used back in the day was, I rededicated my life.
Yeah, right.
Which some teenagers did every Sunday if they felt guilty. But at the same time, I don't want to belittle that term because that was a big deal for me. That was,
Right.
outside of my salvation experience, man, is when I set some stakes in the ground and dove into the Bible, and it was a big deal. And out of that, I felt compelled to get involved in Christian music, man, and just had this desire to, sing songs about my faith and be a part of maybe a band that did that. And of course, I was being introduced and exposed to all these other bands that were doing that. I'm like, gosh, man, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. I remember seeing Whiteheart and just blown away, and I got to meet David Huff afterwards, and he was super kind. And then, that started me on this run. I was saying we'd go see Mylan and whoever else we could see at the time. And
right.
My buddies and I started a little Christian band there in our little country church. And ironically, dude, for a bunch of dudes that had grown their hair out and were wanting to play rock music, being in a rural community church, you wouldn't think there would be a whole lot of support for that, especially back in the 80s, man.
Right.
But it was the polar opposite of that for me, man. We had some older gentlemen that loved the Lord, and they were like, look, we don't like the kind of music you're playing. It's not for us, but man, if you're trying to, speak into some kids and share your faith in that, man, hey, we're all about it. They were just real supportive. We were really pretty lucky.
That was rare for back then.
So that's kind of how I got started in that whole deal.
Okay, so then you go from doing that. How in the world did you end up playing in JAG?
So I had a friend. So I've been playing here locally in the Montgomery, Alabama area for, I guess that band started the end of 84, so 85, 86, right in there. We had our little local Christian band playing at our church and all the youth detention facilities we could muster up to play at, which was awesome because most of those places they would rotate their kids out about every 30 to 60 days. So whether we were good or not, we had a new audience every time that we would go play. So
that is so fantastic.
I was doing all that, and there was the local guy here that was really talented guy I got to play with a little bit, and he was talking about music, moving to Nashville and things like that. So at the time, it's all coming back to me. So somewhere in the mid 80s, I had a friend that was going to church at Mount Perrin in Atlanta, and that's where Mylan and all those guys went. This friend told me, said, "Hey, I'm going to give your name and number. There's a guy in our Bible study named Dean Harrington, I think was his name." And it was with that group Sacred Fire.
He had left Mylan's band and started Sacred Fire.
Is Dean Harrington the right guy? Is that right?
Dean Harrington is the name we were looking for. Yes, that's Dean.
They said, "Hey, I'm going to give your name and number, and we'll pray for you," and this kind of thing. And so a few weeks later, my friend gives me a card with this guy's name and number on it. Said, "Hey, this guy's doing some custom records and looking for a drummer." And I was like, "Cool." And I stuck it in my pocket. And it's, you know what I mean? It just didn't sound very intriguing.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was like, this isn't a band.
Yeah.
This is a guy
doing
some custom records, singing with tracks, looking for a drummer. So I kind of blew it off, stuck it in my wallet. Fast forward a few months, I end up going with this friend of mine to Nashville for the week of GMA. You remember all that?
Oh, yeah.
What a big deal that was back in the day, right? So
right.
We go up to GMA. Dude, I don't know what in the world I'm doing. I'm just this young redneck kid that wants to play in a Christian band. And I went up there with several of my friends, and I don't even remember what night it was or anything, but this was back when, they'd have a rock night at a particular club or a showcase at a particular club. And I remember this. You remember the Cannery?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there was, I think it was a rock night or something they were having the week of GMA at the Cannery.
Yeah.
And this buddy of mine said, "Dude, there's no way to get tickets." But he goes, "Man, just trust me. Just come with me, man. Surely there'll be somebody backstage that'll let us in." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, dude, you got to be kidding me. I can't do that, man. I can't bluff my way in anywhere." And this buddy of mine, he's like, "Oh, come on, it'll be cool." So we go up there, and the evening had started, and we're hanging around, and he goes to the back of the place somewhere where there's this big load-in dock or something, and there's a guy back there. I don't know if he was a production manager or what. And he tells the guy, he goes, "Hey, man, we're just a bunch of young guys interested in being involved in Christian music." Gave him his story. He said, "Is there any way you'd let us in?" He's like, "I'll tell you what, boys." He said, "If you help me put a bunch of these road cases in the back of this semi-truck," he goes, "about halfway through the evening, I'll let you in because everybody will be here and it's not going to hurt anything. So God bless that guy, man. Whoever he was, I don't know who he was.
Oh, cool.
But we helped move a bunch of road cases, which we thought was awesome, you know. So
right.
We move all this gear for him. He lets us in the back door. We slip around, and dude, it was just a who's who of CCM artists back then. I mean, I saw Steve Taylor, Geoff Moore, ironically, was playing.
Oh, wow.
I forgot who else was playing that night. And so, standing in the back of the room, and this dude walks by, and he just looks like somebody.
Right, right.
He looked like a dude that probably had a record deal, you know.
Right.
He had long hair, and he looked like freaking David Coverdale or something, you know. Yeah. Looked kind of like a rock star, and he's standing back there with his arms crossed, just kind of listening. I was like, "Hey, man, how you doing?" We just small talk. We started a conversation, and I said, "You know, what's your name?" He told me, and I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Well, man," he goes, "I'm actually up here in Nashville, trying to put a band together, looking for some players. You know, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, man, you know, from Montgomery, Alabama, and I'm a drummer. I'm kind of looking for a band." And he said, "Yeah." He goes, "I've actually been traveling around with this group from Atlanta called Sacred Fire, opening up for them."
No way.
And I was thinking, that's weird. He goes, "A matter of fact," he goes, "one of those guys from Sacred Fire," he goes, "Where are you from?" I said, "Montgomery, Alabama." He said, "They gave me a card, man, with this kid's name on it that said he played drums." And dude, I'm not kidding. It was like the clock stopped. And so as he's reaching in his wallet to pull out that card with my number on it, I'm reaching in my wallet to pull out a card that's got his name and number on it.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not lying, dude. And so I said, "You said your name is John Allen Garys?" He's like, "Yeah, dude, that's me." I'm like, "Oh man, I think maybe I'm supposed to pay attention to this." So I told him how I got his number. He's like, "You got to be kidding me." He goes, "Well," he said, "I'm looking for to put together a band." And he goes, "I don't even have anybody yet, but I guess you need to come up and audition."
Dude, that is one of the coolest stories ever.
Dude, it's nuts, man. So no kidding, man. I pack all my crap in the back of my little Nissan truck with a camper on it and drive up to just above Spartanburg, South Carolina, you know, 2 weekends later. And I had learned some songs he asked me to learn that were on his custom record. And I played, and he's like, "All right, man, you got the gig. You just need to move up here and move in my basement. We're going to make a go of this thing." So that's what I did, man. No lie, dude. I was the first guy, and we didn't even have any other players, but we ended up, you know, without getting into a drawn out deal, you know, we found some other guys, and a really great guitar player named Paul Britton from Atlanta ended up in our camp, and a kid named Joel McCrite that's a good friend of mine, and we ended up playing together later, even after that, for Geoff's, which is crazy. But anyway, that's kind of how I landed in John's camp, and then we ended up getting a record deal, man, with a label that Billy Smiley had started, which is another crazy story. And then we ended up on Benson.
Wow.
For I think we did 3 records.
I remember I was living with Anthony when you guys did I think it was your first album. It had a song on there called "When Two Worlds Collide." And I remember coming to the studio and meeting you guys and hanging out with Anthony one day when Billy was producing that first album.
Yeah, dude, that's right, man. I forgot about that. So that's when I first met Anthony, man.
Yep. He and I were living out by the airport at the time.
Oh, my goodness. And, of course, that was back when it was still pretty common, unless you were really, really good already.
Yeah.
So, like, John had the record deal and stuff. So our band actually played very sparingly on those records, probably with the exception of Paul, so they'd use session cats to record those records. That's what Anthony was doing there. And
yeah,
dude, I hated it, man. It was a soul killer for me. I was like, what, man, we're not going to get to play, on these things. And, I was trying to think of ways to kill Billy Smiley asleep, man, because I wasn't getting to play on these records, man.
Well, listen, though, Chuck, it wasn't nearly as soul-killing as it would have been had they given you a chance to do it and then you not been good enough and then had to bring somebody in.
Oh, dude, no doubt. Dude, let me tell you something. As much as I hated that, as painful as it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. Because I look back, man, dude, who gets to sit behind somebody like Chris McHugh or Greg Harrington when you're a, green player from the country, you're up there and everything's moving too fast for you. You're trying to figure things out. Just the education from just being in the room with them when they're recording and watch everything from how they tune their drums to how they frame songs. And
right.
oh my gosh, dude, it was priceless, man.
Yep. It makes you better just watching, just being around it.
Oh, no doubt, dude. It was the best thing that ever happened to me because, moving down the road, man, that was part of, what helped prepare me to get to do some other really awesome stuff that I was blessed to get to do. So,
right. Hey, before we move past the Jag thing on to the next thing, it's interesting to me that John lived in South Carolina and not in Nashville. So when you moved in, you had to go there instead of Nashville.
He did. Well, he was a business guy too, and had some couple of businesses that he owned in the area.
Okay.
And so he could maintain those, and it gave him some capital to,
right,
get us out. And we were playing anywhere and everywhere we could, like a 1,000 other bands out there, man. Homeless shelters, high school to 10 kids, whatever, it didn't matter. We were just playing. But there was a really nice recording studio there in Spartanburg, and that's where we started doing some demos there.
Wow.
And it was one of those demos that our guitar player handed to Billy at one of those GMA weeks that, for whatever reason, he, was listening to it and gave John a call. And
wow.
Dude, I was literally home back at our little family farm south of Montgomery, and they'd gone home for the week or something to visit my family. And John called me and goes, "Hey, man, you're not going to believe this, but Billy Smiley called me." And I was like, "What? Billy Smiley? Whiteheart Billy Smiley?" And he said, "Yeah, dude," he goes, "he wants to do a record deal with us, So I want to say that was, gosh, man, this is so far back. I'm trying to remember, 88, 89, somewhere in there, probably 88, I think.
Cool.
And so at that point, that's when everybody moved. John moved to Nashville. Everybody in the band moved to Nashville.
Right.
And we can circle back to this later, but that's when I moved to Nashville and was one of the first members of the, in our world anyways, for you and me, was the famous Janice House.
Infamous Janice House. Okay, so let's just talk about this for a second. Explain what the Janice House was.
So when I first moved up there, I have a friend that some of your listeners may know, Danny Duncan, man. He's a producer and stuff now, and he was a local guy from here in Montgomery that
right.
He had done some custom records and was doing the music thing. And so Danny
was in town trying to be an artist.
Yeah. And so Danny and myself and I can't even remember, maybe Paul. Yeah, I guess Paul Britton, who was in JAG at the time.
Mm-hmm.
There was 3 or 4 of us that basically moved to Nashville looking for a place, found a house. It was a 2-story house there in, is that in Antioch, man, I guess?
Yes, it's off Bell Road before Bell Road turns into Old Hickory and Brentwood.
Yeah, basically, you know how that goes, man. I think it started off 3 or 4 of us, and we split the rent on it. Then over the years, man, it was just a carousel of characters and players that lived there or stayed there temporarily, and that's how I met you.
Yes, it is.
And gosh, man, we could do a whole podcast on the Janice House.
I know, dude. Between everybody that lived there, everybody that stayed there temporarily, everybody that came and set their gear up in the basement and rehearsed, and even those that just came to watch football games, it was like GMA week every time we were all off the road and home.
No, dude, it was nuts, dude.
People would be astounded at all the names and the people that walk through the doors of 505 Janice Drive.
Yep. Crazy, man. What great days, man. Of some lifelong friendships out of that, dude. You being one of them, man.
Absolutely. Well, before we move on past Jag, Chuck, Jody Davis from the Newsboys was in Jag with you and also, ironically, lived at the Janice House.
Yeah, for a while, man. A year and a half, maybe. Jody Davis, Jim Cooper was in Jag.
Oh, from Petra, yep.
We have a mutual friend, Mike Lusk, who played bass. And Paul Britton, my friend Joe McCrite was in Jag. I think that's it, man.
Wow. What did you learn in Jag that you actually used and put to use in your career as a drummer throughout?
Dude, just, oh my gosh, man. Playing, having to go out and play, with the exception of a handful of stuff that I got to play on those records. I'm playing tunes that, Greg Harrington or McHugh had recorded, and dude, that was just killer for me, man. To go learn those songs note for note, and then go out and play them live with a click, and all that stuff. And then, of course, the relationship with Billy put us on the road with Whiteheart a good bit during those days. So, oh my gosh, man, getting to see players of the caliber of those cats, every single night. Oh my gosh,
every night,
and killer days, man. I mean, thinking back, I can remember there were some tours where we piled into a rental car and followed him around, man. I mean, just
Right.
whatever, sleepless nights and long nights driving, and we just loving absolutely every minute of it, man. Living the dream, especially for some wide-eyed country boy kid that had never never seen the rest of the country. It was great. So I learned a lot and met some great people along the way too. And matter of fact, it kind of ties into how I had the opportunity to play for the Dentes. Was, I got to know Brian Wooten
Oh, yeah.
as we were traveling, and Brian asked me to play on a custom record that he was producing.
Awesome.
And lo and behold, this skinny little dude that can play his rear end off named Mark Hill came in, played bass on it, and that's how I became friends with Mark.
Oh, that's crazy. That's awesome.
Yep. And then so, after the Jag thing was over, Mark was able to put my name in the hat to audition for Scott and Chris.
Now, I loved Out of the Gray. Those guys, Scott and Christine, are just amazing.
Oh, dude, listen, man, some of the sweetest people. Oh my gosh. And just treated me like $1,000,000 and just were super sweet. And I just loved, man, that was just a sweet time in my life, man. A lot of encouragement came out of that. And of course, that's how, Mark Hill and I we're dear friends to this day, man. He and I were texting yesterday. It was, one thing to get to be around Scott and Chris. They're just amazing and so talented, as you know. And then getting to play with Mark, dude, was just oh gosh, dude, a huge thing for me. It changed my musical life.
How would you say? Give me a couple examples.
Well, for one, I'd done a custom record with him, and he was, his standards are high, and he just shared a lot of stuff with me about how important it was. Man, dude, I was learning how to play songs and learning how to frame songs at the time still. But just, man, really focusing on patterns and locking up with him. And, back then, I don't know how it is now, but just learning how to play behind in a certain section, but sit there in the same place as you're doing it. And then when to maybe move up and sit on top of things. And at the same time, dude, as big as his musical vocabulary is, he was one of those guys that just drove home to me, dude, less is more, bro. The space between the notes is more important than how many you're playing. And
absolutely.
And so I really, really hung on to that. And then I'll never forget. So when I started playing with Scott and Chris, the reason they were putting a band together is because they were opening up for Stephen Curtis.
Right.
Chapman on the Great Adventure Tour.
I remember that well.
And so I remember before all that started and we were rehearsing and stuff, one day Mark told me, he goes, "Hey, dude," he goes, "you're going to be a different player when this tour is over." And I was like, "Well, how's that?" I'm thinking, am I going to be better technically, or will my musical vocabulary get better? You know how you're thinking when you're young.
Right.
And all that kind of stuff. And he goes, "Man, I'll tell you what," he said, "you're going to be a different player because your confidence is going to be different." And I didn't really know what he was talking about at the time, but oh my gosh, dude! It to me, it reminds me a little bit of the sports analogies when you're whether you're going from junior high to high school or high school to college, the game's a little fast for you, and you're thinking too much. I think it's kind of along those lines where you just get confident in doing what you do well. You learn what you do well and what you don't,
right?
And kind of where your strengths are, and then you learn to play inside your wheelhouse.
Yep.
But it's the reps, man, just the reps. And then, of course, reps in front of good players there to watching you every night on the side of the stage, to being in front of a lot of people. You just start working through the butterflies and everything that sometimes is going on in your head that might keep you from playing as well as you should,
Right.
Just doing the reps in that environment, dude, was a big deal and really helped my confidence. So you know how that goes, dude.
Right. Sure.
You walk into a gig with a totally different mentality after you've had a bunch of reps like that.
Well, I can tell you, walking off the stage with Mark Hill and Scott Dente, that's quite a little power trio.
Oh shoot, dude, man. And then and two, man, it's healthy in a lot of ways, because early on it's like, gosh, man, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. How did this happen? There's so many people more qualified than me to do this.
Yeah, but let me just say this. There might be people out there that are better than us or whatever, but that seat had your name on it, and they don't hand those things out like candy at Halloween, dude.
Oh, dude, no doubt, man. And all the without over spiritualizing it, man, but it's true, dude. There's a lot of divine appointments along the way, man, that either shape you or prepare you for something else,
Yes.
For sure.
So, it's funny because one of the things I think that bothers me about this last generation or even two generations of musicians, especially in the church, is they want your help. They want you to make them better, but then they want to act like nobody had anything to do with them being good except them. They don't give anyone any credit for helping them. And we were part of the generation that was, oh my God, can you believe who helped me?
Oh,
I learned from Scott Dente. I learned from Mark Hill. I learned from, Roger Breland and Truth. We all have stories of people that made us better that were in our lives. But now everybody wants to be who they think they are, but they don't want to give anyone credit for making them who they are.
man, it's interesting you bring that up because Hill and I were talking about this several months ago when I had a chance to see him and catch up a little bit. Because I don't know what it's like now, dude. I've been out of that environment and away from all this for a long time. But that's something that, and it even came to mind as I was kind of thinking and talking about those days. Man, there were so many good players, especially in the CCM world, that were more than willing, dude, to try to help the younger guys around. It was almost like this unspoken rule of mentorship, kind of. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
It's almost like you felt like there were guys, as hard as you were looking for somebody to either model yourself after or to learn from. There were guys that could play and were seasoned and were good dudes that were looking for guys to breathe a little life into. And there were so many of them, man. So many of them. Just little nuggets of encouragement along the way, or pointers, or advice, or whatever it is.
Sometimes they even played the same instrument.
Oh, yeah, go figure.
Like there was no competition. It was all everybody just pulling for each other.
Yeah, dude, I loved that about that kind of fraternity or whatever you want to call it back then. It was even between man, how it was at festivals and between labels. It was just kind of, we're all in this thing together at the end of the day. And for the most part,
right.
You always, every camp has their village clown, but for the most part, right. it was like that, man. There's so many good guys to help give you some guidance, and in a lot of different ways, because there's, whether it was musically or the business side of things or the relational side of things, all that stuff, is important. And there were just so many guys willing to do that, man. And it just, I'm thankful, man. I was one of the blessed recipients of that from several people.
Dude, I think that's all of our story. We were all blessed recipients.
Those are sweet days, man. And gosh, man, the relationships that I have to this day that came out of that were worth every bad or rough thing I ever went through along the way, for sure.
Right on. Well, hey, let me tell a Janice story. Do you remember this? Like, we lived together. There were sometimes 5 of us in that house. There was 5 bedrooms in the house, and we all played in different bands or toured with different bands. There were times when we never saw each other, especially in the summer at home, but we always ran into each other on the road, and we would run into each other at festivals and sometimes other countries.
No doubt. And it eventually got like that because initially, like when I first got there, dude, we're living off white bread and bologna and leftover stakeout potatoes, man. I mean, it was, and all of us, you remember this, dude. You remember the Manpower culture that was there? Yeah. Everybody in that house at some point worked for Manpower because if you didn't have a gig, you were trying to pay the bills and
right.
And so this is a story I have to bring up because this is you, man, to a T. So I remember in those days early on when some of us we either weren't traveling as much or we're still kind of grinding, trying to get another gig, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And guys like you and Anthony and some of these other guys were out playing all the time. Y'all were really sweet to us younglings because I can remember vividly you coming home and saying, "Hey, man, I got some extra per diem. Let's go get some Mexican food." We were like, awesome. It was like, awesome, man. We're going to get some real food, man. So you guys were so kind, and I'll never forget that. And then, of course, I remember, too, when you were home, if we were home at the same time, nobody lived a normal schedule back then. I remember vividly on a weekly basis, about 1 a.m., you're like, "Hey, dude, it's time to go to Kroger." Because nobody else is there, man. We don't have to fight the crowd, right? So.
Dude, we did spend a few nights up all night.
Oh, my gosh. It was good times, man. There was a lot, like you said, there were a lot of talented dudes that came through there, and a lot of good friendships came out of that deal.
All right. So when we went to lunch, because see, it was no skin off my back because it was per diem, right? It's free money. All right. So when we would go to lunch, though, what Mexican restaurant did we go to?
Oh, Las Palmas, man. I remember Las Palmas vividly.
Every time, man. It was so awesome. It's good food.
Look, man, you remember, so you had Las Palmas and then the Dollar movie theater that was
Oh,
down the
yeah.
road.
Yeah. Nolensville, or not Nolensville. It was Edmondson Pike and Bell Road.
Yeah, that's right. And gosh, man, what a there's not a better scenario than a good Mexican restaurant and a dollar movie place near a house that's full of, especially when half of the guys in the house are out doing their thing and doing well, and the other half of us are kind of the typical starving, aspiring player, and you're trying to scrape by. There was a lot of cool things that were affordable for us around there. It was neat.
That is so cool, dude, that you remember all that stuff. That's awesome.
Well, it's coming back as you ask the question. So,
all right. So then let's get from Las Palmas to Geoff Moore. How did you end up playing for Geoff? Because you had met Greg when he was playing on the Jag album.
yeah. So,
And Greg played for Geoff before you.
dude, check this out. The first time I ever met Greg Harrington, and this is the truth, dude. So way back in the early 80s, when I was in that little Christian rock band with my buddies,
Yeah.
a band named called 2020 played at a Baptist church here in town.
Oh, my gosh.
So Roscoe Meek, who ended up with Geoff, and I think Jeff Barkley might have been with him for a while. I can't remember.
Wow, that's crazy.
But I remember Greg Harrington just killed me that night. I was like, oh my gosh, who is this guy? And of course, he afterwards, man, they were just like so many Christian players were back in the day. They were like, hey man, you guys come on up here. We wanted to see their gear and talk about, amps and mics and recording and whatever. And they were, just so sweet and gracious. And
Yep.
that's how I met Greg. And then fast forward, I got married in 92 and Rachel and I were living in an apartment complex, the Summit. Is that right?
You guys lived up the hill from Target.
Yes. Oh, which my wife loved, by the way. So we were living in the Summit, and dude, Greg Harrington lived there.
Oh, no way.
I think Roscoe lived there for a while. But anyways, so I would see Greg from time to time. And matter of fact, even when I was, I met him again, and that's kind of how we got to know each other when he played on some of the Jag stuff, the early Jag stuff, and then we ended up in the same apartment complex. And
that's great.
man, Jeff's camp was awesome way before I got there. Those guys were like, hey, we're playing in Franklin. You guys come down and hang out at sound check and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
So, yeah, matter of fact, that just jogged my memory. Some of the Jag guys and I went down to, I think it was in Franklin. Jeff was playing down there to high school. And I remember, this was probably towards the end of our Jag thing and stuff. I remember it's probably the first time I ever saw Jeff outside of that night I saw him play at the Cannery. I saw him walking around the stage, and he had his arm around this youth director. And I just overheard him talking, and he was just, hey, buddy, man, is there anything in particular you need me to talk about, with your kids, what's going on? He just seemed real caring and concerning about, the audience he was going to have that night and stuff. And I was like, man, that's awesome, dude. I was like, if this deal I'm in now doesn't work out, I hope I get to play for a guy like that someday.
Right.
I remember thinking that,
Yeah.
And then after that, it was on to just watching Greg play, but
Right.
Anyways, so kind of knew some of those guys. And then when I want to say, dude, this was in 93 at some point, I heard that Jeff was looking for a drummer. And it's kind of funny, man. After having for a year, I got to play with Mark and Scott and Chris, and I played on a few custom records and stuff. And I'm thinking, man, now that I'm married, it might be better if I'm really not in a band, as much as I want to be. And that's really why I came here I felt like it was kind of my calling, to go play in a Christian band and sing songs about our faith and try to love on some kids along the way,
Right.
And but I was thinking, the practical side of me was like, maybe this isn't really what I need to do. Maybe I need to just try to stay in town and just do these one-off things or just kind of be a freelance guy, I think is the term.
Yeah.
And so I heard he was looking for a drummer, and I was like, I just don't think I'm going to do that. And so I think Greg called me, and Dale Oliver, remember Dale?
Oh yeah, yep.
And said, man, you ought to really consider this. And so I was talking. I'll never forget, man. You talk about my wife giving me a dose of humility medicine. I remember sitting in the living room talking about all this. And, at the time for a young married couple, what you're going to do next is a pretty big deal, right? So
Right.
I was sharing with her about this deal, and I was like, I just don't know if I should do this. And she just like, well, first of all, you don't even know if you can even get the gig. She's like, I don't know why you're talking about you don't want to do this. You don't even know if you're good enough to get it.
Well, Mark Hill did tell you were going to leave out of the grave with more confidence.
Yeah. I was like, whoa. And man, it was just one of those moments. I was like, man, she's right. I don't know what opportunities the Lord's sticking in front of me, and I better pay attention, So
Right.
I ended up auditioning, and ironically, dude, so we're living in this Summit, and dude, I didn't have a place to play, so the guys at the Janice house were letting me keep my kid over there.
Yeah.
And so, and we had one car, dude. We had one car. So Rachel, she went to work, and I'd stay home and kind of listen and make me some cheat sheets on these songs. And I would jog. This was back when before my knees were crap. I'd jog over to the Janice house, dude, and practice my tunes,
Yeah.
And I ended up auditioning for Geoff. So, and dude, it's one of those, I swear, man, when I walked in the room and was setting my stuff up, just meeting those guys, I went from, in my head, I was like, would this be the thing for me if it's offered to me? Dude, I was in the room 5 minutes. I was like, Lord, please let me get this.
Right.
It was just the camp he had and the sweet guys that were in the band. And
tell everyone who was in the band with you. Once you got the gig, who was in the band?
let's see. So Greg Harrington had just left and ended up, he went to play at the time. I think he went to play with Susan Ashton. Then shortly after that, he started playing for Martina McBride, who he's still playing with.
Right. I know.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So Roscoe Meek, Gary Mullet,
Yep.
Jeff Barkley,
Yep.
and Jeff and myself.
Right. You guys were a great band.
Oh man, thank you, dude. Listen, I was fortunate to land there, and a bunch of really good guys who just wanted to do stuff right and cared about what they did and practiced hard and played hard, man. And just great camp. Like I said, I walked in there, and in short order, before I wasn't done putting my kid up, I was like, oh Lord, A, forgive me for whatever it was I was thinking, and B, I really, really hope I land here,
Right.
And so, and I did, and just a lot of sweet days there, man. Gosh, man, it was almost a decade total.
Right.
About 7 years, and then of course the gigs, even after we dissolved, you're still doing gigs that are you're still contracted for.
Right. Give me 3 of your favorite Geoff Moore songs to play live.
Okay, so first of all, let me get this out of the way. This was a running joke with me and Geoff. I was a huge fan of the Foundations record he did.
Okay.
But we weren't playing any songs off that, which I got to circle back to that. I got a hilarious story about that. He had done some records that had gotten more notoriety than that. So you're playing the popular songs off those records, and then so weren't playing any of those tunes that I really loved. But through the years, I would, what, man, some of my favorite stuff were songs that may not have been single that I just really loved. Some of it might have been lyrically or whatever. There's one song in particular called Only a Fool that was on the last record we did. Kind of a song is about missions and calling, really. And, man, lyrically, that song, I just loved it. And Geoff wrote this killer melody to that tune. And that was one of my favorites. And then, of course, written long before I got there was that song, Listen to Our Hearts.
Okay.
And we always did that, usually kind of broken down or in acoustic fashion. But that's one I can tell you I never got tired of playing.
That's awesome.
Just whether I was playing just a shaker or stripped down kid or whatever, that's just a great song, and never got tired of playing that. So
right.
Those are some that come to mind for sure.
That's great, dude. Okay, so did you get to play on any of the albums with Geoff?
I started playing with Geoff shortly after they recorded the Evolution record.
Okay.
Let's see. So we toured that record.
That album came out in 93, right?
Yes. Well, it would have been 94 now. So so I want to say his fall 93 tour for Evolution was over, and that's when they did auditions.
Okay.
And then so first of the very beginning of 94 is when I started playing with him live. And so, man, dude, it was a different world, we're doing videos and all this stuff. And
right.
we toured. They extended the tour on that record. Things were going really, really good for us and stuff. And I'm trying to think, what was after that? I guess I played on 3 records that he did. It was the Home Run record, and then there was a greatest hits record with extra tunes on it, that we did. I think we did some cover songs, did a Larry Norman song and something for Forefront, played on some of those things, and then we did that Threads record.
Cool.
Was the last one we did. But yeah, I got to play on everything that we did once I was there, which was awesome.
Okay, so we cannot pass this moment by. We cannot move on without paying homage to Geoff Moore's tribute to Abbott and Costello for one of the most memorable Christian music videos of all time, Home Run.
Good or bad. So yeah, you're right.
Dude, it's literally one of the most memorable videos, and it doesn't matter if it's cheesy or corny or whatever. It's memorable, and people loved it. And I just say to those that didn't like it, well, what did you do in your music video when you made it? It's kind of like, if you think back on it, dude, it's complete. It's almost like a Huey Lewis in the News video. It was just supposed to be fun.
It's funny, man. We would have probably made a pretty good Huey Lewis cover band, dude, because everybody liked him back in those days. So, yeah, man. So, gosh, it's funny you mentioned, out of that song alone spawned some pretty cool relationships, So, like, we were talking just prior to us recording here today,
yeah,
about our mutual friend Tim Burke, who he came in and threw some baseballs in that video and pitched, and then
Tim was the all-star pitcher that supposedly Geoff Moore was going to hit off.
Yeah, good luck with that, dude, because I'll tell you something cool that happened. So after it was released, and the song went to #1 or something like that, they did this big party out there at the Forefront. Had this party out at the Nashville Sounds, is that right?
Yeah, yep.
The Nashville Sound Stadium.
Yep.
And so, everybody had gloves and ball out, just throwing baseballs around, goofing off. And one of the things that they did to kind of highlight the afternoon together was that whoever wanted to could get up there and try to hit a pitch off Tim Burke.
Oh, dude, that is funny.
And so there was some cat that worked for Forefront that had played college baseball that was a catcher. So they had somebody that could catch him. Right. And so whoever wanted to could get up there and try to hit. And it was funny because some of the guys that had played in college and stuff got up there and, they're thinking, man, I'm going to take this, I'm going yard on this old man. And dude, Tim is so awesome, dude. Oh my gosh, man. It was pretty comical. And then, I'll tell you a funny story. He about broke both of my hands. I thought, well, I'm going to try this, man. I hadn't played baseball since, forever.
Right.
I played some when I was young and played a lot of softball and all that stuff. And so when I get up there, unbeknownst to me, Geoff had told him to brush me back.
Oh, no.
And so I'm thinking, I'm like, I'm getting a hit off this dude. I'm going to start swinging as soon as his arm starts moving so I can get my bat around.
Right.
And I'm going to get a hit. I'm thinking this in my head. So he starts to pitch, man, and I went ahead and started coming around with my bat. And as I'm swinging, I'm realizing, oh my gosh, that ball's coming awfully close to me.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm able to step back away from the plate a little bit, and I get the bat around.
Just to protect yourself?
And dude, that base, I don't know how hard he threw it, but it hit about a half inch above my fingers in my hands. And dude, I thought my fillings were going to fall out of my teeth.
It shook every bone in your body.
Oh, dude, man, it just, my whole body, it felt like, I'd stuck my finger in some big transformer or something. And
like you were electrocuted.
Ball went fouling off somewhere, and my whole body was shaking for about, it seemed like 10 seconds, Oh
my gosh, dude. I remember the first time I played catch with Tim, it was like, the first pitch was like, oh my God, this guy is from another planet. I always laugh and, you hear people say, oh, if it wouldn't have been for my knee injury or my elbow injury or my shoulder injury, I would have made it to the major leagues. No way. This guy, his fastball not only went 90, 95 miles an hour, it moved 6 inches to a foot when he threw it. It was just incredible.
He was deceivingly, because he was so smooth, he didn't look like he was throwing that hard.
Oh, man, I know. It was truly unbelievable.
It's crazy. I probably threw the ball back and forth to him for about 3 seconds. I'm like, I've had enough of that. I'm going to move on down the line. And I'll tell you, dude, Jeff Barkley, our keyboard player, Oh my gosh, dude, he had a rocket arm. I didn't like playing catch with him either. he was
I had no idea.
he was actually a really good athlete.
That's crazy.
But anyway, yeah, that was a fun day, man. And kind of back to what we were talking about, just a lot of fun things came out of that. I can tell you, I got pretty sick of sounding baseballs there for about a year. That's for sure, man. But we got to play a bunch of cool. We got to play.
That's like hilarious.
It's the truth, bro. We signed a bunch of them.
Dude, balls are not easy to sign because they're round.
Oh man, dude, no doubt, and not smear it with your Sharpie, right? So
what a pain in the butt. I never thought of that, dude. That's great.
I was going to tell you, one of the cool things that came out of that was playing a bunch of dadgummit AA and AAA stadiums.
Oh wow.
The following year, set up on a flatbed out in the middle of the the diamond there, and back then culture's changed a lot, huh? They had Christian night, right? Or Christian music night after some of the games, and so that was a lot of fun, man. Got to see some fun baseball and get to play. And as cheesy as some of that seemed at the time, there's always some kids that you would meet along the way or meet their parents and make you glad that you did it,
Absolutely.
Somebody getting something out of it. So it was a lot of fun, dude. A lot of fun.
My thanks to you for listening today. Part 1 of my conversation with Chuck Connors. Don't forget, next Friday at 12 noon, Part 2. Chuck and I will pick up where we left off. Have a fantastic Good Friday, a wonderful Easter resurrection weekend. I'll see you next week.